I am super excited to get started this evening. I'm super excited for this month. It is Black History Month, and we are celebrating in a lot of different ways here at GA. If you are unfamiliar with General Assembly or haven't taken one of our amazing courses or engaged with us yet, General Assembly is a tech education company founded on the idea that everyone should be able to pursue and succeed in a career they love since 2011. It's also important to understand that we do this through dynamic courses in coding, data, and design, and work to update curriculum with a focus on the most relevant and in-demand skills in those fields, and through continued career support after graduation. I'm honored to be a part of that career support as one of the outcomes managers on the team. And I'm even more honored to share this virtual stage today with Joy, Lule, and Candace to shed light on representation in tech and how to navigate it as Black professionals. So now I'm going to hand it over to Joy as we start the panel.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. I appreciate the handover. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night to everyone in the audience. I hope you are feeling okay. Take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. That's how I typically process information. There we go. Yeah. Now we're ready. Well, as some of you might know, I am funny for money, but General Assembly has made the mistake of bringing me in to host this panel, which is about technology and about the spaces that we occupy, how we can overcome our imposter syndrome, and really get the resources that will help support us in their tech roles. Just because I left my role in technology doesn't mean that I wasn't completely in love with it, just hitting it from another side. But to tell you a little bit more about myself, I'm a celebrated voice actor and creative executive. I've drawn over 30 million views to my comedy content. So I produce short form videos online, really with inclusion as a focus for all of my campaigns and the campaigns that I led at Instagram. Y'all know Instagram. So for 4.5 years, I worked on the consumer marketing team on acquisition, well-being, reels, and all of our other products and services. Now I've curated an online community of over 200,000 people. So they're all laughing with me. And I'm the host of a weekly audio show designed for women daters called Dating Unsettled. So as a voice actor, I'm typically kicking it with HBO Max, DirecTV, Adult Swim, Skybound Entertainment. But as a technologist, I was deeply invested and involved in uplifting Black professionals, especially during, but not limited to, Black History Month. So it's a deep passion area of mine, both to encourage other women in the workplace and to work on projects that further the Black community in the United States, Brazil, the UK, and beyond. I am joined by some incredible guests here. So I will kick it first to Candace. If you would introduce yourself, let the good people know your current role and company.
Hey y'all, hey, I'm Candace. Call me Candace Rogue or Candace for short, that's fine. I work at General Assembly with the lovely Yvonne and Angela. I am a UX DI instructor, a lead instructor there, and I have had the lovely opportunity to be a UX designer, developer, and now the founder of a beautiful creative space for Black folks here in Atlanta called Rogueling. And I will, would you like me to popcorn
Oh, I would love if you would popcorn at kettle corn, please. Over to
it?
Lule.
Nice, go for it.
Well, popcorn kettle happens to be my favorite, so I'll take it. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Lule. I hope you can hear me. So I came to technology and fintech by way of finance, actually, first. So I have a little more gray hair than the ladies on this panel. Been in the industry for about 20 years. Started out in finance. I have a classic finance background, and then I just really loved and knew what technology and frankly design would do. I have a fun fact for you. I was between jobs when I was the president of Ally Invest and now the US. I'm currently the US CEO of eToro. But between those jobs, I actually took a few weeks off and I did a General Assembly program. And I did the design thinking one, and it was so much fun. And I actually think that the world would have more peace in it if artists and designers were the top of the heap. So I'm always aspiring to be an artist and a designer, even though I started out on the numbers side. As I said, I am the CEO of eToro US, and which means we are a trading platform, a fintech. in the classic sense of it. And we have crypto, and we have practice investing, we have stocks and options. And essentially my entire life is dedicated to make sure that individuals, not just institutions and people with trust funds, have access to markets. Because we know that access to markets is a form of wealth building, whether it's in this lifetime or the passing of it in the next lifetime. And we know as a people that that's something the planet has plundered from us. And so it is really important that we partake in this space. So for me, taking finance, taking fintech, and putting it all together was really important for me. And I'm really excited to be at a platform that really does that and celebrates the individual. We're a social trading platform, which means like we're constantly telling people, you know, you're the one in charge, you're the one in power, and be part of a community that does that. And thinking that every single thing has to come from an ivory tower is a dead concept. And so we are excited to be part of that fight for that.
I think that's so great, and appreciate you bringing up like access to capital and resources. That is extremely important within our community. The sentiment has been floating around that Black people are mentored out and we can't do very much more beyond mentoring and skill building. We also need capital. We need finance to be able to kick things off. So thank you so much for that essential role that you play, and review of eToro as well. I'll start with you. Tell us about what is on your mind right now. What are you working on in technology that these folks might be excited about?
So we're working on a few things. So one is we just bought an options business. Options, if anybody doesn't know about it, is a means of trading in the markets in any direction. So you don't have to be just a person that only rides the highs or rides the lows. There's ways to be able to make money in any direction that the market goes. So we just bought a company, an options company, that makes options understandable and easy for people to partake in. And so I'm in the middle of deploying it, both for US consumers and internationally at large. We also have some really exciting things we do. You know, as a fintech, one of the things that I feel really strongly about is like the larger companies have everything under the sun in their menu, right? And so what happens is that gives no oxygen to new startups that want to be able to offer different things for people who are regular folks. Because the larger companies keep on going higher and higher up market, right? In terms of who they're solving for. So I'm really excited to be working on like how to work with other fintechs to be able to offer a broader based financial services capability for investors, not just investors, but maybe they're savers and maybe they're doing other kinds of things. And so growing a fintech community is something that's central to me. And then lastly, I mean, there's so many things. I love my job. I get to do so many different interesting things, but another third piece of it is really building out the voice of investing and making sure that that voice is representative in its nature. We have some amazing spokespeople at eToro that talk about investing and what to do, and they all happen to be from different walks of life. And I think that's really important, not just experientially, but identity-wise, to be able to see the person that's speaking. I am unforgiving about the idea that identity is a factor, not just, I remember when inclusion was the part of the language of things, it was about, you know, it's about experience and personality and brain side and what kind of cognitive thing do you, and I think all of those are important.
Right.
I think cognitive diversity is important. I think path in life is important, experience is important, but identity representation is also important.
I think that's so true, and it makes us feel welcome, right? Brings us into the room. I can't see all of your brains as much as I would love to. Thank you for that. I also loved, you mentioned money in every direction. I affirm that and claim that for everyone listening.
Money. I feel like my halo is telling you that too, man.
Yes, it's giving opulent. Candace, I'll kick it to you. You are building spaces for creatives in Atlanta, and I'm sure beyond. Talk to me about what you're working on right now.
Oh my goodness. I want to brag about the fact that my life does not revolve around work anymore. I used to be a workaholic, recovering perfectionist. So I'm really excited about the fact that when I moved to Atlanta, I was really, really adamant about building community, not only within my professional network, but outside, like making life meaningful. Atlanta was a new city for me. And I remember just deciding years ago, I knew I wanted to like build like a maker space where like creatives could come and just like be themselves, specifically for Black people, so they feel like they can collaborate in community and feel safe to do so. And so I got the opportunity to start on that dream in 2020. So we're almost in completion in terms of building my my new house and I'm going to use it as an art studio and workshop and lots of outdoor space. So I'm just excited about like creating a creative wonderland for not just folks in tech, but just all Black artists and creative. And everybody is welcome, but just remember this is Black women led and Black women.
Right. Everyone can listen, but I'm doing it for a specific community. I like that. Thank you, Candace. That's exciting. For me, I'm on the other side of technology. So I was at Instagram, as I mentioned, for 4.5 years. I quit in October, which was a huge, scary decision because you can imagine, as Lule mentioned, some of the things that, her company's purchasing up, all of the resources that you have at your disposal disappearing into thin air as you choose to become a freelancer and accept those 1099s instead of W-2s. For me, I decided to focus my business on sponsored content, which is highly technology dependent. So the companies including Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, right, or those brands and apps are the focus of my business and how I earn a living now, which has changed the nature of being funny to like, oh, I really hope this joke sells. But I partner with a lot of brands to produce content. Also, as a voiceover artist, being cast in kids animation and a lot of pilots right now, because during this creative work from home season, I'm able to collaborate internationally, folks in Canada, the UK, the US, and projects I can't quite talk about, but I'm very enthusiastic about that also depend on technology. I also think that the new changes in AI, which are super scary to folks, are really enabling and furthering me as a podcaster. So that is what I'm excited about in this moment. And I'm excited to turn it back to those of you who are still actively in the workforce. I want to bring up something from Forbes. So in January of this year, Forbes mentioned some Pew Research. It says that there has been no change in the share of Black workers in STEM jobs since 2016, which is just a staggering fact. It's a factoid. I think that we've seen a number of companies individually report that they've got enhanced Black representation, a couple 10 workers here, 100 workers there. But we've also seen mass layoffs in this industry that are super concerning, right, across all sectors. So both of these realities threaten representation in technology. I'm wondering, because I know, but for the benefit of the audience, why do you feel that representation is particularly important in technology?
You want me to take that on first, Candace? So I think it's important. So I spent most of my life in product design and product development deliberately because I think it's so important for the creators to be a diverse table, especially technology where so much of the code of what life will be is happening, right? When you think about technology, what it has become really is the means of engagement, the means of power sharing, the means of commerce, the means of so many things. And so not having the creator table of that humongous influence in what the future will be, and it will be even more amplified, right? Technology is going to be more, not less, no matter what happens. It becomes so imperative that the creators table is diverse because there are so many blind spots that take place when the creators table is not diverse. And so I think that whether it's AI and how that is, I don't want to code the future with all the biases of the present, right? So that means that we need people who are at the table to figure out what those blind spots are. And those blind spots are not just about political correct language, right? It's so much more fundamental than that, right? I feel like so much of AI right now is just thinking about like, how do I mute the bad language? How do I mute the racist language? And I think all of those things are really important, but it's so much deeper than that when you're at the creators table in terms of infrastructure. And then the other reason I think it's so important is because ultimately power will continue to shift to the technologists in our world.
Yep.
So by forfeiting the representation in technology, you're basically saying I'm forfeiting the share of power, and that cannot be. And so for me, in my space, the technology space that I operate in is either fintech in terms of trading and investing, but also in DeFi. So part of what we do is not only stocks and options, but we also do crypto. And I know crypto is a little rough right now, but DeFi in general is a really important means of flattening the world when its promise comes through. And there's so many promises of it that have already come true. That's another form of technology I'm always encouraging my brothers and sisters to learn about, because the future is going to happen whether you choose to be in it or not. And so the question is, do you want to be at the power seat, or do you want to be at the other side of the table? And I'd like to see more of us at the power seat.
I love that. And sorry, could you just reiterate the area for the benefit of the audience that you'd encourage them to dig into?
Yes, DeFi. So it's short for decentralized finance. It's really where much of like the blockchain technology exists, right? That powers cryptocurrencies, digital assets that are really, really, for some of you who are artists, I'm sure you've heard of NFTs. All of this is sitting on the bedrock of blockchain technology. And decentralized finance is powered by that technology. So knowing about that, how it works, how it helps form, again, capital formation, which is what we talked about, is really important. There's some really interesting projects that are happening all over Africa and Asia and all these places where essentially they are saying, okay, we're not going to catch up to 10 years from now. So let's get on the train that gets us to 20 years from now. And that is technology.
Incredible. Thank you for encouraging them to dig in. Maybe General Assembly can be a point of reference for you as you begin to dig into DeFi. Yeah, that's new for me too. Someone said this is a gem. I agree. Candace, for you, can you talk about how representation is important to your work in your industry?
My goodness. Lule, I feel like you summed it up very well. I think for the first time, coming into this industry, I literally was the only Black woman I saw. I started coding in LA. I started my design career in New York. And as I was matriculating through like coding boot camp, and even when I was navigating from LA to Atlanta for my first engineering position, I hadn't met any other Black women engineers until I got to Atlanta. And it was only 2 of us from what I met. Absolutely, there are more of us out there. But I shift that conversation now to being an instructor at GA and what it means to, for the first time ever, I had 8 Black women students in one cohort. That's insane. Like that never happens. And I remember toward the end of the cohort, them coming together and like just telling me what it meant to them to just see someone in a position to help them and guide them into this UX space. And that's what that is. Seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. Seeing someone in a position that you want to be in or possibly just align with, it makes the possibility more of a reality instead of just a dream. And then I think just to shift it to a more tactical focus, that's a lot of what I do at GA. Very subtly, I have conversations with my students, especially toward the end when they're going into the workforce, about what change looks like, what it means to give help give voice to those who are more marginalized in the conversation. If you hear somebody who's not speaking up, why is that? Let's dig into that, right? So I'm looking forward to incorporating more of that into our curriculum at GA, so that it's not just something that I talk about or get upset about, but something that I can really feel like the people that I feel like I'm empowering and teaching throughout my day-to-day are embodiments of me, are reflection of who I am, and that's about giving a platform to others as well. So I think that's where we at.
That is everything. And we're getting a lot of affirmation for that in the chat as well, Candace. Yvonne shared that there's a difference when your instructor is a Black woman. The side conversations, the knowledge of all of the nuances. For those of you who are listening and are able to type in a safe place or accessible place, would love for you to drop in what's an area where you would love to receive instruction from a Black professional? What's an area where you would love to see representation? It can be a single topic like DeFi, or it can be a wide portion of your industry. I see all areas. Okay, y'all. Come on now, data science. That's what I'm talking about. Just pinch in a little bit. But let us know where you'd love to see representation from more Black instructors and professionals. I know for me, it was certainly in the creator economy. I love listening to Black women talk about how we're leveraging these technologies. And Lule talked about being the inventor, right? Or being the innovator, having Black people in a position of power to build the technology goes such a long way. Calendly, for example, was built by a Nigerian. There's a fun fact for you during Black History Month. And you can think about all of the connections that Calendly is powering globally. Okay, we're getting Python and AI learning, venture capital, Unreal Engine, and lots of affirmations for Africa. We love it. So for me, I would love to learn more about the creator economy directly from Black professionals. I've had the benefit of doing so, but before I saw any Black instructors or professionals, had to do my own research. So when I was at Santa Clara University, I digged into the Silicon Valley, right? And the formation of a lot of these companies that we as creators rely on. One thing that is true, which are issues that both Candace and Lule have highlighted, is that the issues are systemic. They're not personal feelings. Representation is everything isn't just something light or fluffy that we're saying. But the fact remains, and to contextualize it in this space for Black History Month, that racial segregation in the United States remains long after slavery has been abolished. So we celebrate, right, the advancements of African Americans. We celebrate representation, our ability to dive into new topics like AI in the filmmaking space. But the truth of the matter is that all of us are still operating on a Silicon Valley bedrock that is segregated, in which African Americans are disadvantaged, in which Black creators are underpaid, and are struggling with equitable influence and representation. So if anyone's more interested in creator economy, I've dropped a link for you there about the Black creator economy and some of my research in that space and recommendation for Black professionals. So if you're on the other side of tech and still looking to dig in, or you've got a little time after your tech day job, please join us as creators. This is a call to all creatives and creators. We need you. Okay, so we know that breaking into a new career, especially one that hasn't been historically representative, inviting, or where we've been in positions of power, is a major decision. What advice would you give to someone who's considering breaking into technology, knowing that they are not stepping into an equitable playing field?
Can take this one first. I think for me, you're gonna hear me say this word like so many times because it's really what's brought me this far is community. Like um growing up, I did a lot of things in isolation. I didn't really have an opportunity to have like an official mentor or someone to kind of like walk me through the ins and outs of how career life worked and how you should operate professionally. A lot of this stuff I just kind of picked up and I'm just like observing and learning as I went. But when I first started at Blavity, this was the first time I had ever worked at a Black owned company, and it was mostly Black people there. And I really learned what it was like to work with so many brilliant people, and they were all rooting for me. Like even, we were all going toward the same goal. And I thought it was so cool that I could always get on somebody's books and just like have a coffee chat and like just talk about, what they were up to and not only their business, but also in life, having that those well-rounded conversations. So I feel like community is one of those things that it cannot be, it can't be surpassed. Like you really have to work hard to make sure that you're digging in, because on those days where microaggressions want to get the best of you, you lean on your community to be like, yo, look what happened. Like, can we just talk about this? Can we acknowledge that this just happened? You need a space to do that because you'll drive yourself crazy if you don't have any outlets for that. So community.
100% cannot count the number of, what do they call it, water cooler conversations that happen amongst Black people right after a major town hall or a company meeting. Like, let's regroup. So it's good to know that we're there. Lule, how do you recommend other professionals kind of prep themselves or maybe even encourage themselves into joining an area that they know is not representative and has a lot of work?
Yeah. Well, I didn't pick one that was too representative or
Yeah.
I didn't get open doors. It's interesting. So I remember I told you I have more grays than you guys. So I've tried on a lot of different outfits on this topic. And I will tell you that I don't think it's a one size fits all answer. And that what I mean by that is what I have trained myself to be able to understand is that I have to have two thoughts in my head at an all time. And if I don't have those two thoughts in my head, I will forfeit the ability to be ambitious. Because you see, if you look at the world through the lens of will I be welcome, immediately you've muted your ambition. So one of the things I have to do is recognize that bias exists on one side of my brain, that somebody did something, and that look we give each other as Black people, when something has happened, we know that it's happened, right? Recognize it, know it, digest it, spit it out at the water cooler if I can, right? But on the other hand, pretend it doesn't even exist. Because I don't need that toxicity in my brain. And so that allows me, that mental exercise of knowing both allows me to be free to think in terms of taking on the world. And so I think it's something I've had to figure out how to dance with throughout my life. And what I realized is the one side, when it was so dominant, I was right in my analysis of it, but it was taking up energy.
Yeah.
Right. And there was no point in me being right and not growing. Right. So on the other side, if I tried to deny it, it was like this poison that sat in my belly that I could not spit out. And so what I've trained my brain to do is two things at once. Sometimes I'm doing one over the other. But ultimately, I think that is one of the ways that I think as Black people, we have to figure out how to tune in, because otherwise the one side weighs us down, the other side is toxicity.
Yeah. When you said, do you want to be right? And I would even use your earlier sentence, do you want to be right or do you want to be free? is nuts. Do you want to be right about what's happening? Or would you like to free yourself? Would you like to move forward? Would you like to advance? It's incredible and unfair that we have that burden to carry of needing to dip into the this isn't happening tool set, or that this is happening and I need to fight it tool set. But I thank you for
But can I just say
that.
one thing, Joy? Can I just
Please.
tell you, at the level I'm at, it makes me a ninja. So as hard as that feels as you're climbing,
yeah,
it is the reason you're a ninja afterwards, because that is something people cannot do. You're unstoppable. So yes, the one light I would give people is it is hard, to carry the burden, but you can turn it into a skill eventually.
That's empowering and freeing on those tough days. Thank you. I think this gets us to think about imposter syndrome and the feeling of not belonging. I'm almost sick of hearing it. It's, but it just has to come up. It's a topic that we've discussed, I think, ad nauseum within the tech industry because of how few of us occupy positions of power. But it's that feeling, right, of feeling you don't belong. Someone's going to point and say, wait a minute, you're an imposter, and you'll be found out. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome, and kind of what other tools do you dig into for it? So Lule, I heard from you. For me, I do feel that as a creator, not having as many resources, not having as wide of an audience as other creators. I've heard white creators standing in a room complaining about low performance, and those numbers that they were talking about were better than the ones that I get on my best day. They were like, wow, it sucks. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So I've had my own imposter moments too. For me, the choices that I make as a creator on the side of technology are to show up anyway. Because when I think of our leaders and our activists, even when they felt like they didn't belong or they didn't see it modeled, they showed up anyway. So it's not to say that you need to combat your imposter syndrome. I actually coexist with mine. I'm afraid, and I acknowledge that I'm afraid, or that I'm scared, or that I'm nervous, and I take it with me and I do it anyway instead of trying to repress it or convince myself that it's not happening. Candace, any tools for you for imposter syndrome?
As an advocate of therapy, I'm going to get in my bag right here because this is it. So one of my friends shared with me, I took like this, it's like a self-improvement for my business, like workshop. And they were like, we know you're scared, but do it scared, right? So it's very much in line with what you were just mentioning, Joy. And easier said than done, but some of the things that the coping mechanisms that I've had for imposter syndrome are not just for professionals, for personal as well. So I feel like to get to where Lule is, I can't wait to get to be a ninja like you, because the way you are fighting these demons, it's amazing. But I think what I have been doing is, because I'm an empath, I feel everything. And so just like it feels instant for me. So for me, I've used journaling. Like sometimes I just need to take a step away. I just need to write down my feelings so I can separate what is versus what's negative self-talk in my mind, or what someone else has said about me, and it's not actually what is happening. Sometimes I phone a friend, I call a friend and get some talk through what's going on and try and get some advice. There's so many different ways that I've been able to process words of affirmation. I keep affirmations all over my house because I work remotely. I can create the space that makes me feel held and nurtured. I I have lots of different mechanisms of how I can like kind of tap back into like, hey, you are you, like you deserve to be here. And I think that's important. And if you're able to kind of like reconcile with those, with what is true versus, you know, what is just negative self-talk, it's powerful in how you can kind of move through those feelings and, like you said, show up anyway. And that's what I would say.
I love that. And I like the physical reminders too. We are so wrapped up in this technology we're talking about that we forget to leave those sometimes. Over our next 10 minutes, I would love to go a little bit more rapid fire and get some responses from you, both about your career experience. And then in the 15 minutes after that, we'll be heading into audience Q&A. So for those of you in the audience, if you have a question, please start thinking on it. You can write it down physically, put it around your house like Candace, if that helps, and kick that to us in another 10 minutes. We'll be spending 15 minutes of time right at the end of this session to dig into your questions and answers. But okay, rapid fire time if we're feeling ready. Candace, let's start with you. Your role currently juggles both UX and coding, which you've done at various times, even before Blavity. So what kind of personal growth did you achieve juggling UX and coding, and what learnings can you share?
I think I like to say my superpower is being able to speak different languages. Obviously, I'm always speaking English, but in terms of being able to speak to different coding languages and then hop into another meeting and talk about you know, UX best practices with my students, like that's the type of code switching I like, right? Like not any other type of code switching outside of being able to context switch when I get into conversation and still understand like what someone is going through as my team, my coworker or my colleague, and see how can I help them in that way. So to dig even deeper into that, building rapport has been like, that's another superpower of mine. So whenever you get into your first position or whatever position you go into next in tech, set up meetings with anybody and everybody across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just reach inside of your own department, because it's so funny. When I was at Blavity, I would hear like sidebar conversations about what people thought like developers did. They would think that we were like, you know, just pushing one button a day, like we were lazy, we didn't want to do anything. And it was just like, wow, that's crazy. But because I had my UX hat on and we're all about understanding users' needs and understanding what's the root of that, right? For me, it was more of an educational piece. It was like, let me sit down with these people so that I can understand what their needs are and see how I can better assist them in getting there, and how can we work together. And
I love that.
it's easy. It's so much easier. They're like, oh, I could just hit up Candace and ask her those questions from a developer perspective or just design
Right.
perspective. And we can share those resources. So that's what I was saying.
You became essentially bilingual. I love it. Lule, kicking it to you. You're a leader, and you mentioned you've got the seasoned 20 plus years plus grays of experience. Would you talk to us about when you're considering hiring an individual? What are some of those attributes that you look for outside of the hard skills on their resume?
So I actually don't start with the hard skills. Not that I'm not saying that that's not important, but for me, an outward mindset, a person who's wired to figure out the yes in an equation, but the and in an equation, elasticity of thinking, you know, whether it's how they approach a problem, how they approach culture, is important to me. And I'm not saying that the hard skills are not important, but I've spent my entire career acquiring talented people who also can do that. And my goal in life is, you see, I think that the world is made up of too many powerful people that were not vetted for these things. And so then they're at the creator's table, as self-centered as they are, as non-self-actualized as they are, back to Candace's point about therapy and everything else. And so now they're in the driver's seat designing, having not been vetted for the core sense of being a human being, an excellent human being, right? And so for me, I am looking for that wholeness of servant leadership, of self-reflection, of introspection, but then ambition. And this is something I tell people all the time. Ambition is a beautiful, glorious thing. And, you know, you're talking about the imposter syndrome. Oh my God, she's there on my shoulder sometimes. She's not. I say hello to her. But you know what? The whole point of ambition is it makes you brave enough to take risk. And there is no learning, there is no glory without the scar tissue of taking risk. And so I think I look for all those other things that make you a whole human being, because I know then you will be invested in other people, in shaping other people, in being a servant leader. But then do you want it? Because if you don't want it, nobody can want it more than yourself, right? Somebody else cannot want it for you. And so I try to foster that in my mentorship of people, because sometimes, it's hidden in people, right? In our community, we didn't see it enough. We weren't fostered. So there's a lot of digging out of it that comes, right? And so I get it. And so I provide that mentorship where I can to do it. But eventually I tell them, it's time, leap.
Yeah, it's got to be in
Fail
you.
out loud. Fail out loud. Nobody got that imposter. She goes away when you fail out loud, right? Because nobody's got that on you. So to me, those are the things that are really important. Hard skills are very important. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, for me, the starting point is, are you a whole human being? Because if I'm going to invest in you as an individual, that means I am choosing to make you more powerful in this world. I'm choosing to have you be a hirer of other people in this world.
Yep.
Right. And if I have that power, I have to make sure that people who do that are people who are going to bring about that equitable change we're looking for.
No, I think that's great. And you referenced some of the things that you're looking for when hiring. I think that your style is contributing to us like making a change in this industry. Because to call out some research from the Kapoor Center, bias in recruiting practices, resume reviews, and interview procedures can all disadvantage Black talent. So if we're only looking at hard skills, statistics, what university you came from, we know that we're already disadvantaging Black talent and Black creators. So thank you so much for helping to challenge some of those biases as you hire and making the industry better as a whole. Okay, we have about, I think, 2-3 more minutes for our remaining questions here. So I'm going to keep it rolling. Building a network. I know that some people are here with General Assembly today looking to build a network, hopefully scratching some names down. Did you have a mentor that was particularly helpful in your career journey? And what resources do you recommend to find one, or a support system? I'll chime in quickly. When I was at Instagram, Andre Llewellyn was a great mentor to me. He was a senior marketer, had 15 to 20 more years experience than I did. And he and I were in a similar role. And instead of feeling threatened by me, instead of feeling challenged by the fact that I had arrived much sooner, he took me under his wing, showed me the lay of the land, helped break down this kind of like embarrassing subcontexts of politics in the office, and would whisper to me, okay, when you go into these people, this is how you need to be. And I really appreciated that as a young Black professional and as a marketer in technology. So I met my mentor just through the nature of the work that we do. I think sometimes we think about mentor and it's like we have to go on this crazy quest, when it's really just somebody in your environment and in your world. Where did you find your first mentor in technology? Or for those who might be a little bit more advanced in their career, where might they find some mentors? I'll kick it to Lule and then to Candace.
So for me, my mentors come in all sorts of sizes. One of my favorite mentors was a golf playing white dude who was like a soulmate of mine. Another one was an African lady that was from Nigeria, right? So I have all sorts of mentors that come in shapes and sizes. So the one thing I tell people is like, just stay open. Humans, at the end of the day, yes, there's inequity in this world, but there is, at the core, when you find a good human being, that is the thread that is common more than anything else. And then I use my charm offensive to just ask them.
Yeah.
And you know what? We often don't ask, and I don't necessarily say be my mentor. I do it in a way that's sort of, because that could feel like a too big of a marriage for somebody with, a busy life. But it's like, can I have a call with you? Can I discuss something with you? Can I pick your brain? So just using other language that is inviting, I think, and you'd be surprised how many people respond so well to charm offensive that basically means they're talking about themselves. And then they love seeing that. Most people, they do want to do good in this world, and so sometimes we have to also help them be like, yeah, I belong in that room. Help me, help you, get me in that room, right?
I know that's right. I know
like,
that's right. Yeah. We just have to ask sometimes.
Ask. And what's the worst that happens? No, please. Like our ancestors have seen so much more than that.
Thank you. Candace, I'm going to ask you a much different question, actually. It's right on topic of what we've been talking about. And this is someone looking to reclaim their career power. We know that you were drawn to the title not just because it's General Assembly, not just because you have the benefit of Lule, myself, and the amazing team here, but also that people might be feeling like they're in a place where they have lost that mojo, where they've lost their sauce in the career. Maybe they got laid off. They're in between opportunities, in between industries. Can you offer a word before we go into our Q&A for those who are looking to reclaim their career power?
For those who are looking to reclaim their power, I mean, I was laid off in 2020, so I know what that feels like. I really do, but it was an opportunity for me to like sow into myself, and to like dig deep into my community and just like ask for help, just goes back on the topic of what you all were just talking about. I never had any like formal mentors, but like the people that I worked with were like mentors to me because they taught me so much just working alongside of them and being in the one thing that I can delineate from, so I've done product management too. Product management you associate with like I'm always in meetings. I'm always talking to people. So you always get these opportunities of like, oh, let's go walk and take a chat and have a chat about XYZ. But with development and design, you're so isolated sometimes and you're so, task focused that it's hard for you to kind of look up and ask for help or see that there are other people around you. So for me, if you are looking to go into the spaces of like data science or development or UX design, where sometimes those positions tend to be a little bit more isolated, please be of service. Just be of service. Like, I see you're working on a project, like let's work on that together, right? And I have made so many great connections just by like picking out something that I was really interested in. I meet somebody during a webinar or something of the sort, and I'm like, I saw you were working on this. Can we link sometime? I would love to help out with this, right? And then you make a new friend, and then they teach you things along the way. So being of service to others, not being of service to others really just opens up the doors and the lines of communication to people and to opportunities you might have not even thought about. So that's what I would say when you're trying to reclaim your power.
Can I just throw in an amen for that? Oh my God. Like, that is actually what people don't recognize, is it's the giving that gives the taking.
Yeah.
That is so true. Be of service, lend your talents, lend your spirit, your energy. Somehow that has been the thing that has gotten me out of a funk whenever I'm in anything.
Yep.
When I serve, when I recenter myself to serve, it gets me out of my head and into what the purpose is about. And then it reminds me, so many of our ancestors took so much worse.
Thank you. Thank you for that and for giving them an actionable tip too. Come on. Hello, affirmation. All right, we are pivoting now into our Q&A portion. So if you have strayed from your phone, laptop, or listening device and you're somewhere in the kitchen or restroom, make your way on back and ask those questions. We have a plethora here, so we're going to dig right in. Please try to keep those responses short because we want to tackle as many as we can. So I'll start with this one. As he says, I would love some advice, feedback on how to navigate from full-time work to 1099/freelance/self-employment. I'll take this one quickly. I published a YouTube video, which is how to balance your full-time job and work and things that I did immediately afterward. So please feel free to check that out, Joy Ofodu YouTube. Some of my practical advice for those listening here is that you should make a plan. It isn't a decision you need to make in a rush or when you're upset. I would actually recommend you balance both your freelance and your full-time for as long as you possibly can. Having multiple income streams will benefit your finances as long as you're managing both. Be excellent in your job so that no one has any reason to question what you're doing in your side hustle or your freelance. And then as you transition, think about doing something that you could do 40 hours a week. I think when we envision freelance in technology, we think about working for 2 hours a week and then going to party the rest. That's not what it looks like, baby. You're still going to be on Zooms. You're still using software. You're still pitching yourself. You actually manage a lot more of your finances now. So I would just encourage to find something that you truly love that energizes you for your freelance side hustle that you could do with just as much rigor and enthusiasm as you're applying to your job in technology. So I hope that that helps. I have a lot more to say on the topic, but I want to make sure we get some other questions answered too. Thank you so much for that question. Lule, we have a quick question for you. What's your view of the digital nomad employee?
I think that I'm not rigid about what kind of employee people are. I'm much more, so we have a virtual culture, for example, right? So some people are virtual, some people are hybrid. Most of our culture is hybrid, meaning people come in once or twice a week, but a good chunk of them are across the world. So, and one employee, not across the country, I apologize. And then, there's one employee who was in New York, got fed up with that environment, is going to California for a little bit, and then still logging in, still working, right? So I think for me, I'm less rigid about saying this is what it should be, and more about committed to the social contract that I ask of people. Because that social contract can show up in different ways. It doesn't mean you have to be in a car for 2 hours, right? It's a social contract of being present, of collaborating together, of inputting together, of not thinking just vertically, but sideways as we problem solve, right? In terms of connecting. So as long as, to me, those things are seen, my social contract for my hybrid culture is to make sure that I'm adapting our culture to a digital culture. So we have all sorts of employee engagement things that we do that's not physical alone, right? I'm not saying physical contact is not important, but I think that you just have to be an all of the above kind of employer if you want to motivate people nowadays. It's harder. You have to be more deliberate. But nomadic is not a bad thing.
Thank you. We have another question here from an anonymous attendee. What professional communities do you recommend for Black women and people of color to provide ongoing fellowship and support, much like you're receiving right here? Well, I'm glad you're receiving it here. I'll throw a quick nom for Sister Circle, Black Women in Tech. It is a LinkedIn group and Facebook group nationally here in the US that you can join. Candace, any professional associations or communities for Black women to participate in fellowship like this?
Goodness, yes. This one is more so just it's not Black women focused. It's just more about Black people and community in tech. So please join Rebuild Black if you are into coding, data science, UX, any form of tech. We Build Black. And tell them that I sent you. And then also there's another Slack channel that I'm in, Blacks Who Design. That one I'm not as active in, but We Build Black, I've literally been like in coding challenges or like been stumped on something, asked a question, and people like respond immediately. So it is really a community, and We Build Black. So yeah, join us.
Thank you. Lule, any for Black women in finance or in any other field that you're part of?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few. The best thing I'd tell you is if you see my Twitter, the people I follow, it's literally I've cultivated all the brown and Black and people of color and the different walks of life that I feel like it's like a really good menu for people to choose from. And so what I get out of that also is that I'm constantly, even in the social context, getting the well of insights from those people. But there's a phenomenal brother group called Earn Your Leisure, which they really sort of took a different take on talking about money and investing and really bring the culture of being Black into the conversation as well in a seamless way. But there's plenty of other things that you could do like that is I think are wonderful to follow as a community and to join as a community. As I said, look at who I follow, and I can guarantee you're going to find one or two things that you really like.
Thank you.
And it's very simple. I'm Lule Demmissie, so it's not that hard to find me.
Right. Come on now. Use that networking capability. Okay, we have an anonymous question. How do you separate yourself from work when you should be resting or doing other things outside of your shift? As a creator who jumped into freelance, this is really tough because now my job is to show people me, my life, which can really bleed. But it helps me to just literally put the devices away. I need physical separation to also schedule myself. And even when I worked in technology on the W-2 side, was very firm about from 5, 6, that laptop is closed. We're not checking things. We're not making ourselves anxious right before bed or on the train or out with friends. Like if you can have separate devices, separate those devices. That's what worked for me, really just doing the hard shut. Candace, any tips for you on how to separate yourself from work when you should be resting?
I think my no game has gotten really strong. Like knowing that no is a full sentence was so powerful for me. I have gone through my own, mental health crises, and I've needed to really evaluate how much energy I was putting into things that were not serving me or were not helping me grow outside of the work confines, right? So I don't want anybody to have to go through that particular situation, but really operating and flexing that muscle with saying, no, I'm so sorry. I look forward to working on this tomorrow morning and collaborating on this issue with you tomorrow. But I have an obligation that's here, you know?
I
Give
love that. And I would love to chase with you because we're getting a lot of questions about your field here. What's some advice for someone that finished a UX design boot camp to find a job quickly, like within a few months? And similarly, questions about going into UX or specifically looking for that UX design job.
Yes, two things. So I have noticed that, like, I've been on the other side as a hiring manager at Blavity as well. And what I can tell when someone is copy and pasting versus someone who has really taken the time to like research what the company is, how they're like making impact. So in some boot camps, they really operate with like it's a numbers game. It really is. It truly is. But instead of me sending 10 applications a day, I'm researching the top 3 that like most interest me, or the job requisitions that most interest me. And then I'm putting a lot of, forethought in, instead of doing like a long 3-page cover letter, I'm writing a 1-paragraph intro to somebody's Gmail that I found on the internet, or go straight to their LinkedIn to make sure that they know, like, I'm really interested and I really want to just figure out how we can work together, because I think what you all do is cool. Those type of inquiries on LinkedIn always get me. And I'm like, okay, it's like somebody I want to work with. So being more intentional about your reach outs and not just kind of copy and pasting every cover letter you see. And then also, I know it's really hard if you find yourself being more introverted. That was definitely me when I was in LA and I was the only Black woman, and it was really hard for me to go up to people, whichever. But attend webinars like this, right? Like, it's so much easier to, I am a boss at being in the comments, right? So like, I would come to webinars like this and I would just chat it up in the comments, and people be like, who is this person? Like, let's connect. And I just made conversation in that way. So it was like my own way of being extroverted, but I wasn't like, I didn't do anything that didn't feel authentic to me. So that's another tip for my people who feel like a little more introverted, but still want to dig deeper into community and build community. So that's what I have so far.
Thank you. I hope that encourages folks who are getting into UX to be a little bit different so you can stand out. Lule, I'm going to kick it to you. We have a specific question for you and then a general. Are you a member of Chief? I'm curious to know, is there a Chief for Black women who are VP and above?
I mean, there are lots of different. I'm not familiar with Chief, so I don't know if it's an organization. I'm not familiar. I'm not a member, but I have a lot of different, sort of organizations and associations that I'm a part of. I will say to you that I think all of those are great networks, but what Candace says to you is actually true. It's those personal relationships and these shared moments that you don't want to waste, right? These moments where we go somewhere and there's that nod, or, oh, I like that, and then following through that thread, I have found to be so much more meaningful than any organization that I've been a member for. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be members of the organization, but we don't want to outsource the responsibility of creating human connections by just being part of organizations.
Yep, I think that's vital. It doesn't do all the work. And the general question, which is something you might have experienced, do you ever feel that you're the only person of color or only woman in the room, that you're expected to act in a specific submissive way, like they are looking at you as if you should sort of minimize yourself? How do you break that expectation and not lose yourself continuing to do your job when that happens?
Yeah, it was soul crushing on the way up. It was soul crushing. And I think part of it is what I just told you. I didn't know how to do that 2-brain thing. Now I know how to do that 2-brain thing. When I'm in a room where I need to be commanding and leading, I shut off the other side because I need to have no noise of doubting myself. Now, there's nothing wrong with doubt, but doubting oneself is a different thing, right? And so what happens is, after the meeting, somebody might tell me this happened and that happened, and that's fine. I can observe it like a anthropological play-by-play afterwards. But during the meeting, I try not to make it even like present in my mind, because it immediately shrinks you somehow, right? And ultimately, as I said, that nobody wins when you don't win. Maybe they win, but you don't win if you feel shrunken. So I've really practiced that. And that practice of art, it's not just like, it's not because I find to myself like, be hard, stay hard. No, it's not that. Actually, the more vulnerable you are, the more better you become at this, right?
Right.
It's all the things that you guys have been talking about. Like I learned how to journal, I learned how to do therapy, I learned how to communicate with people. So it's actually the softer I made myself, the stronger I became. But that's how I handle it, is I really do that dual brain thing, and I've just mastered it because I think, and as I said, I just feel smaller if I'm always thinking like I'm an outsider.
Thank you for that. I am so energized by all of the questions that are in this chat, and sorry that we couldn't get to them all, but you do have the benefit of having met us as panelists. So again, this is Joy Ofodu. We have Candace Rogue and Lule Demmissie. I love that name. Thank you so much for your time today, ladies, and also to General Assembly, Angela, Yvonne, and the entire team for bringing us together to talk about reclaiming your career power. As technologists, it really is in our hands. Even when we are underestimated, even when we are not celebrated, we are still putting in the work, and we are still lifting each other up and showing up in fellowship and spaces like this. Right before all of you leave, please check out the feedback link inside the Google form to encourage more programming like this. Would love to know if you could just fill out that Google form for us. Angela dropped it into the chat. And wishing everyone an amazing Black History Month. You can scroll up a little bit to continue the hang Angela dropped in, but thank you. Happy Black History Month, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.